Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Best Practices in Working with Owners and Improving Operations panel here at the 3rd Annual Short-Term Rental Forum here in Austin, Texas. You want to get us started?
Sure. Ashrit Kamireddi, I lead product and operations at AvantStay. We run close to 2,000 properties across the country. We have about 30 in Austin, a lot on the West Coast, a lot on the Florida Panhandle. So excited to talk about product or operations. I guess it's an ops one, but they're closely intertwined.
Hi, I'm Jen Wilson. I'm with Extenteam. So we actually work with property management companies and owners to find offshore remote talent and we solely work within the short-term rental, vacation rental space, and really want to make sure that we're providing exceptional talent to assist with overall guest experience.
I'm Greg Brooks. I'm with Global Strategic. We're also an offshoring provider. So we have about 1,000 seats in the Philippines, another 500 nearshore in Central America. And same thing, trying to be a one-stop shop to provide incredible guest experiences as well as giving operators and owners a scalable resource to grow your companies or just operate a little bit more smoothly than the typical chaotic day-to-day that it can be, especially as we come into busy season here for most of the operators out there.
I'm Stephanie West. I'm the COO of HostWise. We have a little over 100 doors, mainly based in Pittsburgh, but we're also in Austin and Denver.
I'm Emily Fishman. I am with Streamline Vacation Rentals. We have about 1,000 property managers, and it's a property management software geared towards enterprise clients.
Everybody, can you guys hear them? Okay. Maybe pull your mics closer. Maybe that's just me, but just so you guys know. All right, the one thing that Sarah and I really like to talk about all the time is how each and every guest stay matters to all of us. Because if someone has, a bad guest stay at our place, it's going to reflect on if they're going to book at your location in your city. So let's kind of just air this out right now. Where do you see other operators going wrong so we can help uplift the whole industry? So it's okay. Let's talk about it. Let's see some of the stuff that we see operators doing wrong, what we can fix. Who wants to lead us off here? Who's passionate about other operators doing wrong?
Number one, where they go wrong, I think the emphasis on safety comes last. That should be your first. When I'm looking at my community, my neighborhood comes first, my clients come second, my team comes third, and then the guests. So many people are scared of guests and a bad review. But safety's got to come first. I know we're all kind of looking at regulation too, and depending on what kind of neighbor we want to be, they're going to take that into consideration whenever they're deciding what regulation they're going to give. So safety needs to be more of a factor.
I think one is just the pace of growth, right? Like when you're starting up, you want to take on every single owner. It's exciting to get new leads, and I think being really thoughtful about what types of owners you want to work with, what kind of footprint you want to have, and can you support this? Can your operations actually support the growth? And then just make like when you're ready for growing, you kind of think through how you're going to staff it, whether it's people, software, et cetera. So I think just early on, getting those reps and trying to figure out what you can manage.
And who has seen operators in their own town maybe grow too fast in maybe areas that shouldn't be short-term rentals? And then exactly what you're saying is that's where we all kind of suffer when there's too fast of growth, and your neighborhood suffers and then the guest suffers. I want to just ask you really quick, going back to safety, that's a really large blanketed topic from, let's say, having a fire extinguisher in the kitchen to proper egress. But when you are saying safety, what do you think that the operators at the top are doing wrong with safety, like that top concern?
I think people don't set up a system and a protocol until something goes wrong. They're not working on prevention. They're just dealing it with once it happens. If you don't use some kind of anti-party device, we use Minute, you should shut down your units until you put one in. I feel like it should be in regulation to have one. There's just the standard stuff, carbon monoxide, all of your fire equipment, that needs to be checked at least every 4 to 5 days. We automate those tasks. But as far as the party prevention, there's lots of different things we do. Do we want to get into secret sauce? What happens when there's a party? Sure. Kind of thing. I love to share this with people because I want everyone to know it. Another mistake operators make, we don't work together. People think that there's a lot of competition. We should be sharing all of this information so we all figure out what to do. New thing we've been having happen, never happened in the last 5 years, is people don't want to leave the unit. They're checking out late. They're leaving the locks on. They don't want to go home. I can't get a hold of anybody. I will tell you that 2 weeks ago, I had a cleaner go in at 1:30 and the guest still wasn't there. If you're set up for this, feel free to use this. It worked great. I played Baby Shark over our smart speaker for 17 minutes, and it got them out of there. I swear to God. It's stuff like this where I'm like, I don't have time to go there right now. I don't want to talk to a guest. Baby Shark it is, But having those types of systems, I'm not even joking. We do stuff like that. Chad? We've had like 6 parties in 5 years. It all starts with preventative a little bit. The normal stuff where you're asking guests and you're vetting them kind of thing. But we look at our minutes, our occupancy, we use our cameras. If we also use our neighbors. Everybody gets a 24/7 line to call. They also get a discount, but that kind of stuff. It's like when stuff goes wrong, you have to have your systems and train your team. We do fire drills. I call the VAs. I'm a neighbor. I complain. I see how fast that gets to me. Stuff like that. Train your team. Yeah.
That's a good segue. Let's talk about team. Let's say you do have an offshore team. How are you triaging any sort of, let's not just talk about parties, but just a guest that needs help? What is that communication in training your team? And so I want some of our team experts to talk about that. How can we, address our team and let them know what's most important and how to handle that?
So for us, when we are looking for offshore talent, we are looking for people specifically that have hospitality experience. So they're going to be coming from backgrounds like guest services in a hotel. So they have the experience and background to be able to know how to handle guest situations. And we tell our property managers that we work with, our companies that we work with, the team member is an extension of their team. We want them to feel like they are, that with that company specifically. So when it comes to training them like they were, in another room, that they were in the same meeting space, and just giving them the opportunity to, be proactive. A lot of our team members, especially with our partner companies, are like, we love it because they are so, proactive, and they just come from that background. So I think it's really important to be able to have those team members, but also know that you can empower them so that they can make those decisions in those types of situations.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing, too, even going back to the previous question, is, whether you're an operator who, short-term is kind of a passive thing, or maybe you got 2 to 5 doors, you still got your W-2, it's something you're doing as an additional revenue stream, or if you're the AvantStays, the larger operators with 2,000, 10,000, 20,000, I think it's building your business for the business that you want to have. From our perspective, like Jennifer was saying, a lot of the operators that we work with, they've got a good team. They're doing a lot of it themselves, but they're not giving any thought to the business processes, the implementation, the accountability that needs to go with that. And when you internally have that foundation within your company where it's like, hey, I've got good people, I think they're doing great stuff, just go put the fires out, you don't really have any bar to judge, engage, and scale and take that next step, right? So whether the next step is, hey, I want to go take on 100 more, 100 more properties, 100 more listings, and I'm currently at 100, or whether it's, hey, I've got 200 doors and this is a great kind of lifestyle business for me and I now want to build a team that can manage it day to day. I think for a lot of the operators out there, and it's common really regardless of what size they are, that the documented systems, taking those lessons learned, like we were talking about, having the party policies, but then not just saying like, okay, I need to put that fire out, but it's, hey, how can I be proactive and develop systems and processes so that my team can be better empowered to handle this in the future, and so that I can start to kind of standardize, that guest experience so that they are happy while taking care of my owner's assets, while running a business that I'm having fun at, right? Not having that job that you're tied to, but actually structuring it and building it like a business, especially when it comes to the offshore piece. And like, let's be honest, for most of the property managers out here, like everyone here is kind of a VA, right? I'm not sure. Show of hands for the property managers. How many of you guys have like a set office that your team's coming into every day? Okay, so say probably about half. So like most of you are probably remote. So especially in the new remote working world, it doesn't matter if you're in the Philippines or if you're in Denver or if you're in San Antonio, right? Having those refined systems and processes creates that accountability. It creates the consistency in your operation so that whatever your goal is, whether it's scale, whether it's stabilizing, whether it's integrating new software and technology to make yourself more efficient, you have that baseline, right? So coming at it from the mentality of build the business you want, not the one that you currently have, you have to have a team and a culture that's kind of always dedicated to refining the process, sharpening the iron so that you can stay ahead of it and run a very, productive and very efficient team.
Let's segue because you mentioned it. Ashrit, you start with this. Like what are owners' top concerns right now? We're past COVID. Things are balancing back out. What do you see current owners? And you have mostly luxury properties. Like, what are your owners' concerns at this point in time? Is it revenue? Is it the guest experience? What are you running into?
I think this obviously varies by owner and how they got into the space. But I'd say that the number one concern is revenue. Depending on whether or not they managed during COVID, they have some expectations that I think they have to sort of adjust back. And so a lot of that conversation for us is what's realistic this year? How does that compare to last year? How's that going to forecast? And trying to be as, collaborative as possible around their goals and helping them. Ultimately, we want them to achieve their goals. We also need them to kind of understand where the market is. And then that's that can be a good conversation around, are there ways to increase the revenue for your asset? So whether it's upgrades, whether it's, hey, we need to look at floor prices, and we need to look at, you've been doing 1 week stays, maybe we want to change what we're doing. So I think the starting point is figuring out the alignment around expectations and then trying to decide if there's ways that we can kind of tweak around the edges to get them to perform better. And then we also, we focus a lot on revenue optimization. So it's one of the places where you can have a pretty educated conversation. The owner has certain expectations from just anyone can go on Airbnb and see prices. But us helping them kind of understand how the market runs, how much supply there is today versus a couple of years ago helps them kind of re-anchor.
Who here is having those revenue conversations constantly with their owners? Okay. And then when do you draw a line in the sand of when I'm not going to have this conversation anymore? It's like time to part ways, but we'll get to that. But let's chat about when you're speaking to the owners, is it a one-on-one conversation with your organization? Are you sending out proactive emails, just letting them know kind of what the market trends are? How are you getting ahead of those conversations with the owners?
Sure. Yeah. So we have, we have obviously a lot of properties, so we can't do one-on-ones for just proactively with every conversation, but we do a combination of monthly newsletters that are, a big part of those newsletters is revenue and what we're seeing and just generally trends. Like, a March newsletter might be talking about trends for the summer. Then we do revenue webinars. Those are kind of sometimes market specific. Sometimes it's just the basics of revenue management, so they understand kind of how our team is thinking about collectively all of the assets. And then we'll do one-on-one conversations if the owner requests it. Or if, we're kind of we'll look at an asset and say, hey, we're 15% behind where we want to be. Let's go proactively talk to the owner. Let's talk to them about some of the decisions we're making. So, I think you want to save those one-on-ones for when there's either concern from the owner or you think there's going to be a real outcome from that conversation. But yeah, for us, it's more scaled plus kind of async with emails.
And HostWise, what are your top owners' concerns right now? Same revenue?
Always. The first question I get anytime we're doing a walkthrough is, how much can I get per night? And I go, it doesn't matter. That's going to change. And then we explain exactly what RevPAR means. And we kind of go down that rabbit hole. For me, I would say just under 70% of my business is client management. I work hands in hands with clients all the time. One thing has been really helpful for me is we do the setup and the staging of things, and everybody wants to be open yesterday. They want me to do 4 months of work in 3 weeks of times. We've done Asana. I have all of our projects laid out per unit of our staging timelines, we add the owners into there. If we need them to do something, if we need Wi-Fi info, if we need garage codes, we give them a task on there as well. So they can see our progress, but I can also go, hey, I'm waiting on you for this part, but I limit that conversation. I don't give my phone numbers to owners anymore. No way. Absolutely not. After the 4 a.m., what do you think about these curtains? I'm never doing it again. But some of them are like my favorite people. I'm very transparent with them. I go, our favorite clients are ones we never talk to, because we don't need to. We'll let you know if it's on fire, but until then, enjoy your time. You know what I mean? But that's been really helpful. We also have a pre-launch document that we give them about what to expect. Here's what's happening in your house. It looks like we're doing nothing, but there's a reason for that. And then we have an onboarding process too. We give them their own number. They can talk directly to us. Email, same thing. We keep them involved. And if an owner calls, we make sure somebody answers very quickly. But we also do things like before owner stays, we have an inspection kind of thing. So our owners and our clients are just another layer of guests. Sometimes they're worse than the guests. Most of the time, yeah.
How do you have, though, I would love for you to provide these amazing human beings with specifics on how do you have that conversation with an owner about something that's just not working in their property. And I think even the team building experts here too, like how do you have a conversation where you stay positive and you have that sensitivity to sometimes this is their biggest investment for a lot of them if we're really looking at the individual investor. So what are some, if you have a script or if you have like some sort of framework on how you tell them like, hey, like these twin beds in this primary suite, they're just not working, or like the 8 bunk beds aren't bringing in like what are those conversations? How do you work around that with properties that are underperforming? You know exactly what they need, but you've got an owner that just won't see the light of day. They won't budge.
You use the data. We ran into that with we've already got a bed. It's a full. It doesn't count in Airbnb, you know? Just letting them know if we switch that to a king, you're going to have $6,000 extra this year in revenue. Or using comparable properties going, you're just as good as this guy. You should be getting it this much. We want to do this so we get you into this lane. That stuff's been helpful for me.
I agree. I think comparing the data and just being transparent and open and laying out facts is the best way to tell your owners, this is how we're going to make you more money. You could have a king bed, right? That fits 2 people. Awesome. No problem. But if your last 3 reviews were negative because your king bed is lumpy and you're not replacing that mattress, that also impacts your revenue and who's staying with you. So laying out the facts, and doesn't have to be like in an aggressive way, right? Like let me help you is kind of the conversation that it turns into.
I think it's setting expectations from the beginning, kind of what you guys talked about. I mean, there's hundreds of different operators here. There's tens of thousands all across the country, but to most owners, as well as most guests, you're just the vacation rental management people, right? So I think it starts from being selective, like kind of pick your box, whether it's determined based on your market, whether it's determined like AvantStay with the more luxury high end, and like right from those initial conversations with owners. I think be black and white. Give the data, do an analysis of their current portfolio if they have one, or the few properties they want to bring on with you, and start having those conversations very, very early, right? I feel like a lot of people over the past few years, a lot of companies, it's just been acquire, bring under doors, and you sell the dream, but then when there's too much inventory and rates are going down, all of a sudden that bar that you set up here, you're filling it down here, and that owner is all over you. So I think it's approaching it from number one, knowing yourself, knowing your company. What is our box that we want to manage, and stay in the freaking box. You know what I mean? Don't try to take somebody on that's outside your scope or outside your area, or try to overpromise and under-deliver, because I think that's what puts people behind the 8 ball from the very beginning. And just, I mean, we have clients all over the spectrum, multifamily, association, single family, some of the more established verticals. I mean, this is a very young kind of sub-industry within the management space. And I think now you're starting to see the real operators settle and then start to realize like how important it is to kind of define who your ideal customer is, and then start having the conversations you want to have right from day one. Don't jump in way up here.
Let's talk about new customers.
So Who is a property manager that's looking for more clients right now? Everyone? Okay, great. Let's talk about that acquisition. How are you finding new owners? What have you seen? And just give us the secret sauce. Like, what's been the most successful campaign or marketing campaign that you've done to get new owners?
I guess I'll start. I think the strongest campaign is really referrals. It's hard to scale that when you're like, I want to find another 100 owners, but it's the one that's the most authentic because it's usually coming from a homeowner that's like, I love working with this team, this company, et cetera, and they're bringing in their neighbors. It comes from our team that is doing a great job with the particular, set of homes, and they're also just kind of they're just kind of networking with other homeowners, right? They hear they're visiting the homes a lot. They sometimes run into the neighbors, et cetera. So I think ones that come in from people that really know the brand, they know why they want to come to you. Those are the best homeowners, and those are the best from the time that they join, and they stay for a very long time.
Are you financially rewarding them in some way?
We not directly.
Okay.
But I think in general obviously there's management fees, everything else you can play around with, but typically, if you're coming in from network, it's a kind of like you're a friend of the family, right?
Sure.
So I think that's always the best. And then outside of that, I think it's thinking about where you want to be a thought leader, and whether it's, SEO content or running, actual marketing campaigns, but trying to do that in a way where you're authentically getting people that want to be part of your company for, and I want to say like the right reasons. But, I think for us, we're national. So there's a specific thing that you're thinking about when you want to join AvantStay. And you're kind of comparing us against all the local operators, and you say, hey, I like that you guys do certain things at a national scale. So I think just trying to figure out ways to get a set of interested homeowners that actually understand the brand well before they join. So then when they're talking to our sales team, when they're talking to our local teams, their expectations are aligned.
Let's do a poll too. Who here does give a referral to their clients for giving them a new client? Is that something that everybody's doing? Yes. So and will you do that for your team too? If your team brings on a new client, is everybody giving them referral fee? Okay. So just one person on that. Can you share marketing wise though? Because AvantStay, obviously a larger organization, what percentage of your marketing do you know is going to budget? And everybody can kind of think about this. Do you have that marketing budget that every month, no matter what, you guys are reinvesting in those campaigns? Because obviously the referrals can only go so far.
I'd say about like half our marketing is going towards owners, half's probably going to demand. I think it's with supply, it's a much more it's a lot clearer to track ROI. It's a lot easier to understand like what you're getting for the spend. So it's a better place for us to spend money. With demand, you can also just think about all the different OTAs out there. So we spend about probably half of our marketing budget, and then I think it's obviously the usual suspects like Google and Facebook.
Sure.
But a lot of it's kind of local, thinking through like where can you put sometimes it's like sponsoring a local event, sponsoring a baseball team, stuff like that, where we want to be part of the community and not just spending money on clicks on Google.
Yep. HostWise, can you speak to that too? Because you're our neighbor in Pennsylvania. What are you guys doing in order to get new owners?
From the very beginning, I knew I wanted to be super quality based. I started in this industry completely by accident. I left a 10-year career and I needed a side hustle, decided to get into cleaning. I had a $50 bid on an Airbnb cleaning. I said, I love to clean. Airbnbs sound great because nobody's home. I won't have to speak to humans. Now I talk to humans all day long. But I started a cleaning business, and it went. It was great. It was wild. It was amazing. Nobody had never really cornered this side of the market. But I knew from being in all of those units that nobody really cared about quality and that nobody was actually ever in their own units. Fast forward, one of my clients became my business partner and we opened this. Now I went from a $50 bid to a little over $5 million in sales in 5 years. But what ended up happening is that quality that I didn't see from day one is still kind of stuck in my head as I do things. We spend almost nothing on marketing. We don't do a whole lot, and we turn down about 90% of our leads at this point. The reason being, we've got a 4.93 overall People come to us. We don't have to go to them. And we've gotten to the point where we can pick and choose. And it's a really great place to be, because sometimes not all clients are great clients. We turn a lot of people down that have great houses, but I go, she's going to be a nightmare. It's not worth. I have 1,000 minutes in a day to work. I look at that like $1,000. I'm not spending $900 on them, making sure that Jennifer is happy. Like, I can't handle that. You know what I mean? But that quality, Airbnb, our main channel, if somebody is in our market and they're looking for an STR online, they're going to find us. They're going to see great reviews. Their friends are going to say, hey, yeah, I've stayed there. It's awesome. It's been, quality has been my biggest seller at this point.
More so this year than ever before, going to these conferences is the word hospitality.
Yeah.
Part of the conversation, which gets me so excited. And I think we're moving in the exact right direction. But at the same time, we have AI at the forefront of a lot of conversations. So being as real with us as you can, everyone up here, how much do we really do we literally have to automate everything to be successful? Or how much is it worth it to still have some manual interactions with our guests and with our owners? And can you speak to that balance?
Sure. Yeah. I think that it's just a question of scale. I don't. If you're running 10 homes, like, your AI is not going to automate your day, because you're going to be talking to all the owners. You're going to be talking to probably a lot of the guests, and the efficiency you're going to gain. It's your time, I guess, and you can obviously decide if you can, automate your day to day. But realistically, I think the AI scale starts happening. I mean, we look at it quite a bit. And I think we're at the scale where it is impactful, but it is still a lot of work to implement, because whether you're thinking about CX, you need to understand the data well enough to know, like, what are people reaching out, and then how do you basically triage a request and then, action it. And I think that's true for that. It's true for owner relations. How much do you trust AI to manage a really important owner, and when they're not even necessarily happy talking to someone outside of that market, right? So I think it's, to your point, hospitality is a people business. And so I think there's a place for it. I think things like, we look at dispatching vendors, we look at, recommending the right time for, when someone should come into the house, how should we group cases, stuff like that are more operational. There's definitely value in it on the revenue management side. So I think there's applications, but I don't think we're quite ready yet to be using it talking to our most important people, which are guests and owners.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's definitely certain situations where it makes sense when you're automating things. If you're looking to put together like a training manual or policies and procedures, it's kind of nice to, have your own ideas, but then utilizing AI to kind of put those things together a little bit easier. I think at the end of the day, especially when it comes to communicating with your guests and your owners, you definitely still need that human element to it. People are so focused now when it comes to technology that, a lot of times now it's like we're missing the human interaction. And even for me, just personally, when there's no phone number, and I need some kind of assistance. If I go on a website and there's no phone number, and I have to either depend on like a contact us form or an email address, it's such a basic email address, it gets me so frustrated, because I just want to pick up the phone and ask the question and be able to get whatever I need to get done taken care of quickly. And so I think that especially in these situations where your guests are coming in at, midnight or 1 a.m, and you can't depend on an email or, a contact us form if they need immediate assistance. So I think definitely there's a time and place again for like AI, but you have to keep that human touch.
Yeah, I mean, how many of us have called, I don't know, your bank, your mortgage lender, your whoever, and as soon as you hear the click of the robo dialer, you say, talk to agent, right? Like, it's definitely coming. I think it's really kind of two different ways in it, right? And I love all the software providers here. Anyone who's got AI on their backdrop out there, you're not fully out. There's definitely still manual processes that even on the software side. I mean, AI right now it's very expensive. It's why, you typically see the big names like Microsoft and Google and, open.ai, that's why, because it's taking billions and billions and will be trillions of dollars. So I think for like the everyday operator, there's some cool solutions, right? There's like personally for myself, like all my calendar automations, setting my to-do list for the day, time blocking my time. I use a cool program that actually tells where I'm traveling and gives me like recommendations on places to eat. So I think there's some cool like personal use cases. I think when you're talking about trying to control an owner manager relationship or a guest manager relationship, it's just not quite there yet. And people still want the speed of service. And, candidly, as corny as it is, they want to pick up the phone and be able to talk to someone to get a quick answer. So, it's definitely coming. It's something that everybody should be dabbling in. I think even as I'm sure there's many entrepreneurs over here that are clocking 60, 70, 80, 90 hours a week, I think there's definitely some kind of personal unlocks that early AI, and this is kind of like fun AI, like OpenAI, 70% of their revenues currently is coming from B2C products, which basically means those $20 a month subscriptions they're getting, right? There hasn't really been anybody that's found an enterprise level solution, and it's going to take a ton of time and be very expensive to get there. So I think whether it's having a really good team and maximizing their potential by lacing in some AI, whether it's offshore solutions like ours that kind of help on the bottom line so you can bring in more people and get to guests quicker or free up some of your time. I think everybody needs to be approaching it from a hybrid setup right now. Make sure, do a software audit, make sure you're leveraging your software team. Ask them to really dive in. What does AI mean? What is actually being automated? What data sets are you running things through? But then also realizing you still need, and I'll put a number on it, the next 3 to 5 years, you still need to have a person there on the back end who's going to be able to pick up the ball in order to fill in where the AI just can't yet. And I say yet.
Who was surprised by these responses? Who thought like it was me all like AI all the time, and who here was like relieved that? Raise your hand if you were relieved that these rock stars are still using humans to communicate with guests. Because I just think there's a lot of pressure for us to automate everything. And in the hospitality industry, it's like I got into this for the human connection, like you mentioned. Like, yes, I also love the fact that like I can turn over a space and like I know that when they walk in, it's going to be incredible. But also there's that connection. And sometimes when guests reach out or owners, it's because there's some sort of friction happening. It may or may not be your fault. But for them to reach that like no phone number on a website, I think us collectively as a short-term rental brand, we have to do better at that hospitality component of communicating with our customers. You want to do the next one? Are you good? Okay. So my next question for you is, how can operators best ensure guest safety and privacy while also providing assurances to the property owners? Are your property owners, did either of you have to like remove cameras from any you did? Okay. You got stories. What went down?
No, I think it's more of just like, especially if you're getting someone that used to self-manage, they just do all kinds of stuff that you're like, this isn't compliant at all, right? So I think it's our viewpoint is obviously exterior cameras, and then we look at obviously state regulations, et cetera. So California has different rules than Texas, right? But, it's easy to lean on, like, these are the regulations, but in general, guest expectations are you're not going to have any indoor cameras. We explain what noise monitoring means, and it's like we're not recording you speak, but we're tracking decibel levels, right? And so our general viewpoint is we're going to be very transparent with the guest on what exists and why it exists. And sometimes in that transparency, it's like, if you're planning to throw a party, you're like, probably not with this one, right? So I think we try to make sure that it's so obvious to you that if you're going to do anything that, you're concerned about that, you're just going to book something else. And then on the owner side, I think it's just, most owners are pretty reasonable when you talk through like what are the guest expectations and what, and also explaining what we are doing to be proactive between, ring cameras, exterior, noise monitoring, the fact that we do inspections, et cetera. Like we know what's going on well enough to make sure your home is safe. And once we're communicating that, I think they're okay to like basically say, hey, you guys got this. If they're not, that's probably a bigger concern about the type of homeowner.
Anyone else? Stephanie, you got thoughts on this? If you don't, it's fine. We can move on.
No,
I got more questions.
I was just kind of thinking, how many people have been shut down by Airbnb and you didn't even get a reason? Got your not if anybody wants to admit it. Thank you, Love Bug. You're awesome. It happens. It happened to us twice, and it was at no fault to us. But we had to find a solution. The new camera, the policy that's going around, we had a situation, full disclosure, where somebody was a remote worker staying in one of our houses, put a webcam on top of a lampshade. They clipped it on there. It must have fallen inside at some point. Cleaners and inspectors missed it. I'm not upset by that. I don't expect them to be staring into lampshades. But the guest that came in next went to turn the light on, saw it inside. We were shut down, had no idea. The reason we were okay is because we use StayFi and we build 2 different systems. All of our technology in our house that we put in there, TVs, Google Homes, our Minute devices, our cameras, they go on a separate secure network that the guest can never touch. Our second layer is for guests only. That's a splash screen that comes up. We use that so we can collect data. We can send out our newsletter, kind of get some direct bookings moving that way. But B, also I can monitor what devices are on there. If I see a camera on there, that's coming off. But also if somebody's accusing me of there being a camera, I can prove that there isn't. Because without that information, if somebody shuts me down just for something that's accusatory, I need a way of backing up my claim that it's safe. And it didn't happen. So think about that when you're talking about safety. Definitely, like the Minute, the occupancy. Minute has never failed us. We've never gotten a false positive. The noise decibel meters, except for thunder. I did yell at somebody in the middle of a thunderstorm, but that's okay. I learned my lesson. But they're always spot on. The occupancy, it saved us every time. Those are super important. Trying to think if I'm missing anything.
I have a question about Minute. Just those devices. Are you passing along those fees to the owner, or is it something that HostWise is paying for?
We pay for the actual, because we require them in our contract to be in a unit, we pay for the actual Minute itself, but they pay for the subscription.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I think that's something too, as you're starting to bring on more clients of, if you're going to make things mandatory, then what are the financial repercussions for both the client and for your business? We do have some questions coming in. Bring them in. We'll answer all of them. Let's start at the top from Mindy. What are your maintenance pain points? Oh, no one has any maintenance? Like, what are you talking about, right? Well, let's go into that, because I'm sure like the teams are dealing with maintenance. You guys know what these concerns are coming in. What do you see at the top, and how are we dealing with those?
I can speak to it just listening to property managers, right? Number one is just keeping folks on your team, depending on the area that you're in. There's so much turnover. And then actually having a checklist, like expect the unexpected, right? Understanding I need to go into my unit. I'm going to check my filters every, 3 months. Make sure my pool heater is working. That way the next guest that comes in is set up for success, especially if your owners are staying next. You want to make sure everything is like pristine. So just being prepared that way.
I think on our side, a lot of what our offshore team members do is the maintenance triage, cleaning, scheduling, all that stuff. And I'd say even just a pain point from the service provider standpoint is all the different platforms everyone's using. Like you've got, the cleaners to my property on the east side, they use Slack, but then I text this guy who does these 5 properties, and then the other person, like we have an actual automated workflow because they have some software. So I always think the technology piece and just that triage when we go through the implementation with a client, really diving into like, okay, what are all the avenues of entry? What is that checklist of, okay, for it to go, guest stay is over to now it's ready for the next guest. What are all the pictures that have to be verified? Restocks, all of it. That is always, I think the communication piece of that is always tough.
If you are on the smaller side right now and you're planning to grow, one thing I wish I would have changed in looking for a maintenance person in the beginning is they need to be tech savvy. They need to be able to look at your PMS. They need to be able to set up your Echobees to your smart home. It's kind of something that's generally not in a handyman maintenance guy application, but just a word of advice there.
All right, we got some good questions coming in. So can you share your owner onboarding flow starting after they sign the agreement?
For us, I do kind of, I mean, when we bring someone on, it kind of depends on the client how quick or how slow I'm going to push them. Some people we don't work with investors a lot. We're first-time people. It's my 100th house, but it's her first time trying to do anything ever. But, you know, they've traveled all over the world. They know it all, right? So some people I have to start really slow with. As we get a signed agreement, we make sure that we're all on board with the price point. Then we give them a timeline. We schedule photos, and I just kind of go from there. We do the pre-boarding checklist, which we send to a client, which says things like, I don't know if this ever happens to anyone else or just me all the time. Clients will give us their house to work on, and then they want to come back and stay halfway through it. And it just kills your momentum. So we've put all kinds of rules in that for when we're onboarding. But yeah, that's pretty much. And then after that, we don't talk to anybody. We just keep going, and then we do pictures. Sometimes we're listed and they don't even know. We'll give them the heads up, but we'll also load them on. They'll have an owner's portal so they can see everything.
Yeah, ours is pretty similar. So I won't bore everyone.
More the same. Like it.
Has that ever happened to anyone? Do owners always try to stay in the house when you're working on it? Is it just me? Do I give off stay in this house, please vibes? I don't know.
Well, they just get really excited because it looks so nice. And they're like, well, no, like you can't, you're not going to make money. Okay. Next question is, what's your escalation process for handling guest issues when having remote people handle guest complaints or guest communication?
We try to have, like, basically we have a mix of offshore and onshore or I guess local managing any guest escalation. So once a guest is checked in, we try to get everything to someone that's local. Just the latency between, hey, I don't know where the remote for the Roku is, and then them calling offshore, and the offshore's like, I've never been in this house. And like, as much as we've tried to figure out how to provide that data, it still doesn't feel like, you know, they weren't in the house, right? So as much as possible, anything that's happening at the, you know, once you're checked in, you're going to get routed to someone local. The one obviously caveat is our team has to sleep. So 2 a.m. something comes up, how do you manage it? So we do have an on-call, you know, flow. So there's always somebody that's available, and so we will route things that happen after hours to our offshore team. They will basically triage that and say, hey, this is urgent or not. And then we have, you know, we tell our on-call team, you have your ringer on, et cetera. So that generally works pretty well. And I mean, the amount of time there's something truly urgent is pretty rare still, but we just have to make sure there's some redundancy there.
Let's talk to the people that hire the teams. Like, what is that conversation? Because obviously we're still hiring you as our operators.
Yeah.
How do you communicate to your offshore team? Like, this truly is like when there is this SOP in place. How do you reinforce that? Because I feel like you guys probably have a behind the scenes also where you're explaining this is escalated. How do you explain that to your team of like how to handle escalations that maybe we don't even know because you're having those chats with them?
So for us, you know, the team member is going to be trained by the partner. So we do training on our end, basic kind of vacation rental, you know, guest services kind of training. But, you know, the partner company is really the one that's going to be, you know, focused on training the team member and understanding, like, you know, in these kinds of situations, you know, is it a remote staff, you know, team member that's helping? Is it onshore? And that's a really great input that you provided as far as, you know, certain situations, you know, maybe it should be handled, you know, in office kind of thing. For us, we have a 24/7 team member support as well. And in addition to that, we have a partner success team that we have throughout the entire time that a partner company is with Extenteam. We have our partner success team as well. So if there are any challenges, you know, if a team member is having some issues when it comes to guest escalation and there needs to be some additional training that needs to happen, you know, obviously we want to make sure that the team member, is happy, but at the end of the day, the partner company is happy as well with that team member. So if there are any challenges, or if we find like, there needs to be some additional support and coaching that needs to happen, we try to be proactive with that as well.
And I think the advice there is, we can all go out and source our own virtual assistants, but then it's also like, who is managing that person? And I think that's a value that you add there that a lot of times maybe we don't think about when we're just hiring that way. Let's get to this. This is a great question. Do you guys require owners to have a certain smart lock so you control like lockouts so the whole team's on the same page? You guys do? That's a non-negotiable? Mm-hmm. All right. Even if they just bought one, you're like, no, you guys are smiling like, yeah, we played that game now.
Can I ask what brands you guys endorse?
Mostly Yale locks for us.
Yeah.
We use links as the API connection. So we don't require the same lock, but we require it to work with links correctly.
Okay. That was hopefully anonymous. That helped you. All right. When you're doing client acquisition, are you interviewing the client just as much as they are you? And what is the litmus test for a good client? And I can't read the whole question, but I think it says maybe your top 3 tips. There you go. Thank you. And is there multiple people on your team that decide if they're going to be a good client? Like, how does that go?
I think inherently yes, but it's not a job interview, right? Like we ultimately want to earn their business. But I think, like Stephanie said, like I don't want to work with someone that is going to make our operations team's life just terrible. And I do think that 90% of our time is spent on like 10% of the owners. Like even with us managing that, there are just owners, and it makes sense. Like if it's your like family home that you've had for 3 generations, like you care about it a bit more than someone that's an investor that's only thinking about what's the return on it, right? So I think we want to make sure we're a good fit, and I think we try to be as transparent as possible in terms of this is how we operate, this is how we work, and in the process, I think we end up, I wouldn't say like weeding out owners that don't want to work with us, but I think it's like it's again, I think I've said this a lot, just alignment on what our expectations are. I think we've even seen cases where owners, we like tell them everything, but then they still want to work with us. And then we find out in 3 months, like, yeah, all the stuff we said, like, this isn't a good fit, right? So we probably need to do a better job on that, but we try. If someone wants to work with us, we want to try to make it work.
I have a lot of situations where I will go in and talk to someone and they go, we're looking at other operators too. And that's smart of you, yes. And I won't push as hard because I'm like, this is a lot of work. You know what I mean? But I've had a couple situations where I've let them go with other operators, and then we get the call halfway through that we need you. And I go, there's a kind of I told you so moment in a lot of this, but it's also a really good feeling when that happens to see an insight of how somebody else does it. They're absolutely interviewing me, and I'm absolutely interviewing them. I am looking at their house, like how do they live? What are the things that they like? Anytime I've gotten into a home or a unit to talk with a client, they've almost always gone with me. And secret sauce again, the one thing that always saves me is when I talk about our safety protocol and having a person in each territory. I have someone within 10 minutes to everywhere that I have units to each of our territories. That hands down gets me whatever house I want. They want to know that somebody's this close away. And I always say things like, when you talk to them, please ask them about their safety protocol. And I feel like a lot of operators go, well, then we call the police. I want you to ask them what happens when the police don't show up, because we have protocol for that, and we go through that with new clients. And I don't think anybody else does.
There's like the takeaway right now. Just add that. I mean, first you need to actually add it to your business, but that is a differentiator. Okay. As you scale, how do you ensure you're able to continue your routine inspections, playbook, your standard tools? So I think those routine inspections, let's just do that. How are you ensuring that those continue to happen with your team?
We've automated scheduling. So every time there's a guest stay, there's a pre-stay inspection. Depending on the market, there might be a post stay. So depending on basically every market, we have a certain cadence, and then we started over time. You kind of learn, so we've layered things in, like if the home is vacant for a certain amount of time, even if we had an inspection, we have a check-in, right? And so when I joined 3 years ago, we had tons of SOPs. it makes sense to have SOPs, especially if you have like a pretty small team. But over time, we've tried to take those SOPs and turn it into software. We built most of this in-house, but if you're using Guesty or Streamline, et cetera, you can still take most of those processes and turn them in. Like, we acquired a company that used Breezeway, and everything was pretty much automated based on how they operate. So I think that's really critical once you probably get to 50 homes, that it's not just like there's two people that know how everything works. Because once you have any turnover on your team or you add that 51st home, you really need the processes to be standardized. And then I think a lot of it's just being nimble too, right? Like you start learning as the first, ideally you're proactive, but the first time something goes wrong, you realize, oh yeah, I need to probably add this to my playbook.
I think the biggest thing on our side is like being intentional with it. There's definitely levels to it. If you're a smaller operator, like spend time, block 2 hours a week to just document what is our turn process, what's our listing process, how do we onboard a new owner. Like just spend those little segments of time, even though you might only have 5 doors now. Get started early. Once you kind of have an established business and you have a hierarchy and people working under you, I think having that commitment to the process and the implementation of it and empowering your people to do it and making sure those playbooks, those manual playbooks are updated is pivotal. And then, when you're at AvantStay or even larger, I think then looking at the software piece and saying, how can we now build some business efficiency in and take these manual processes that we have and implement them in the software is kind of the natural progression of where I think every business owner or manager should be, right? You always have to be looking at the process. It's just where you're at from manually trying to document a few checklists every week to building out multi-million-dollar software, leaning on software partners is kind of the flight plan.
All right, here we're going to do rapid fire really quick because I want to get these done. We have 2 minutes. Tech stack integrator, does it exist? Because this person has about 18 different pieces of tech. Is that normal? Yes, until you integrate some of it. So just let's talk about your tech stack. Really, like give us how many pieces in your tech stack right now, do you think?
We used to have 18.
Okay.
I think we're down to like 4 or 5. But the one thing I'll just quickly say is just vetting your software as early as possible, talking to people that have done this successfully, understanding what's right for your business is critical. There are several property management systems that are all very good, but they're all incredibly different. And I think to get out of 18, it's to find the right PMS and then make sure those things integrate natively with support tools you'll have to kind of add on.
I think it's important to note, too, that some of these companies might not exist in 2 years. A lot of people are going to be bought up. You're going to see people fail at this. So don't spend a ton of money if you're not sure that it's going to be here. That happened to us.
Ask the right questions through that sales process.
And we'll just answer this question really quick. I think the property, how long it takes from signing an agreement to listing the property, that's going to depend. Was it previously listed? Are you actually furnishing? So I think that one is like kind of, we can't really give
All depends on individual situations.
Sorry, we can't answer that one more succinctly.
It takes you 5 years. No.
Yeah. This really quick, though. I think we have 1 minute left. I think let's get this question answered about as far as tech, devices, subscriptions. Let's go. I'm even going to throw marketing in there. What does the property manager pay for, and then what does the owner pay for in your portfolio?
I think it's an art, not a science, right? Like I don't think it's a vanilla there's a lot of expenses you incur. I think you pass the ones that feel real to the owner, and then you figure out which ones are like, they expect you to handle this, right? So, yeah, I think IoT we talked about, right? Like we have an IoT fee, and it includes some of the IoT things, but it doesn't include, it doesn't include buying the IoT. We cover the lock. But if there's a monthly subscription, we'll pass that on.
That's a great answer. Stephanie, what about you guys? Is it standard or is it case by case?
It's pretty standard. Now that I think about it, no, it's really complicated. But it's generally we charge between 18 and 22%. We're not I don't want to nickel and dime my clients or my guests. We're doing whatever seems fair, but there's sometimes where I'm like, we got to trial this and we got to try it. It just has to be cost of doing business right now.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure that everyone up here will field any questions out in the lobby, correct? Or in the hallway? You guys cool with that? Thank you. And everybody, we're all in this together, so we're all here to answer questions and let's share how we're building our businesses for sure. Thank you guys. Have a great day.